I'm really simple.
Yeah, that's the understatement of the year. Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Plank. I respond to various theological and ideological questions and claims from a rationalistic and naturalistic approach in an effort to give and explain the opposite viewpoint and help to balance the conversation. Before we get into today's video, a special shout out to my most recent super thankers: Wigamus, James Lamica, Martha V 4654, Banana Slug 1951, JGS 1122, Piao Meow Noir and a Waifu Car, Kimberly Ross 6333, and Salcrum 670. Thank you all very much for your kind support of my channel. You are the dedicated denizens of deconstruction, helping me to diligently duke it out with dogmatic dum-dums. Thank you very much for helping me to continue to do what I do. And if you like what you see in this video and would like to help out the channel, make sure to subscribe and click the bell so you'll always be notified when new content comes out. And of course, like this video, maybe pop in a comment. All that really does go a long way towards pleasing the YouTube algorithm, which makes us all feel warm and fuzzy inside and delights our dreams at night, and keeping my channel motoring along. Now on to today's video. Today we're looking at Todd Friel, proprietor of Wretched Radio, and one of my least favorite apologists currently in the game of Christian apologia. Most of the prominent proselytizers have some measure of attempted logical rationalization for their beliefs, fallacy-laden though they may be, and usually will back that up with a decent ability to talk a good game, even if they have little of substance to offer, and can usually grease the proverbial wheels with a bit of charisma. None of this is true of Todd Friel. He has some of the weakest arguments since Ray Comfort's banana claim. His persuasive tactics are often just relentless assertions that he is correct because the Bible says so, and there isn't a drop of charisma in this man, just unending depths of smarm.
This blob-like, repellent belch of nature. Evolution doesn't have a plan. It makes frequent and catastrophic mistakes. And this is one of its most horrible botch jobs.
And today we're looking at a video where Todd has engaged in one of my least favorite apologist tactics: going to a college campus and attempting to street preach to students who are just trying to live their lives. Get to class, go to lunch. I mean, it's one thing to do this sort of thing on a public street corner, but it feels even dirtier to do it on a campus. This is where these people live and go to class. They literally pay to go here and should not be subjected to arrogant talk show hosts looking to gin up content for their channels at the expense of kids just trying to go about their day. Frankly, the school administration should not allow this sort of thing to go down. But let's see what Todd has to say for himself in his attempt to get them while they're young. So have at it, Todd.
I'm really simple. So as an engineer, a numbers guy, tell me, why do math equations always come up with a consistent answer?
Because they're always constant in this universe.
That's right, there's constants. But what makes them constant?
Laws of physics and math.
Laws of physics, all right. But who wrote those laws?
Why does it have to be a who? This question is poisoning the well right from the start. You frame the question in such a way as it demands a god or some form to answer the question. It's like calling the universe creation because that demands a creator rather than just calling it existence. It's like the old question, when did you stop beating your wife? The question is designed to manipulate you into an answer that you don't agree with no matter what you say. The laws of physics don't have to be written by anyone, because the laws of physics are descriptive, not prescriptive. Laws like those that govern what we are and are not allowed to do in a society are prescriptive. They are intentionally designed to tell us what is and is not allowed. As such, they have to be written by a who. But laws that are descriptive are just describing something that already exists. They just explain what happens. The law of gravity just explains that things fall on Earth at a rate of 9.8 meters per second squared. No one had to decree that and write that law in order for it to take effect. It already existed, we recognized it, and recorded it as a descriptive law.
We think that we identified the correct formula. We experimented enough times and we concluded that's the law. Fair enough, but that still doesn't tell me why we have consistent outcomes. Here's my premise, that if there is not a bigger constant in the universe, there's no constants in math or in science.
There are constants in the universe. There's a gravitational constant to the universe. It is a constant in math and science because it is a constant of existence. And there are other constants of physics as well. Radioactive decay, electromagnetism, atomic attractions or repulsions, chemical interactions, temporal relativity. We may not fully understand every minute detail of these forces and constants, but we have a pretty good and ever-increasing understanding of them. No one is denying that such constants exist, but there's no reason to think that they aren't naturally occurring constants or that they are in any way undergirded by some kind of ethereal, supernatural, willful being.
Because if we are random, nothing, we kind of came together over billions of years and sort of got our act together and became moral, started walking upright, developed eyes, nose, ears, mouth, taste, all of that. We kind of evolved that way. There wouldn't be any constants.
Why not? Why can't the universe have natural forces at play that existed as natural outgrowths of temporal/spatial existence that resulted in the formation of our planet and eventually the life on it, which then evolved into us? Seriously, for all the time I have been listening to religious apologetics, I've heard this line of thinking espoused again and again, and it's nothing more than an argument from incredulity, where they conclude that because they can't or refuse to believe in something, it must not be true, improbable, or the argument must be flawed. This is a specific form of the argument from ignorance. It's easier for Todd to believe that Magic Man used magic powers to expecto patronum everything into existence than it is for him to wrap his mind around the possibility of this just being the way the universe is naturally. Well, sorry, not sorry, Todd, but I don't care what you can and can't wrap your mind around.
We would never have anything that was certain because it's all random, according to evolution. Fair enough?
No, not fair enough. Evolution does not say things are random. Quite the opposite, in fact. Evolution is blatant cause and effect. Natural selection states that evolution is directed by the environmental pressures on life forms. They respond and adapt to the world around them and are shaped by the forces at play in their environment. But maybe you aren't talking about biological evolution specifically, but maybe instead stellar formations, like how stars and planets and solar systems and galaxies develop or evolve, if you will. Maybe that's what you're referring to. Well, to assert that it should all be random without a God to direct it insists that the default state of existence is chaos, that atoms shouldn't bond together unless a God makes it happen with magic, that objects with mass shouldn't be attracted to each other unless the guiding invisible hand of God was pushing them together, things like that. Well, why? Who says that the default state of existence is random chaos? Who says there can't be natural constants? Why can't there be some forces in the universe that result in some manner of order that can result in things like our planet, where laws of physics function reliably? Again, because you can't wrap your head around it? Well, again, I don't care. Nor does the universe itself.
The universe is under no obligation to make sense to you. What that means is your 5 traditional senses, which rose up out of the Serengeti, which help us not get eaten by lions. They're very good at that. They're not as good at contemplating infinity. They're not good contemplating timescales much longer than your life expectancy. You can't intuit billions of years. You can't intuit infinitesimal. There are things that are hard for us. There are things that may even be impossible for us.
Do you believe in evolution? And what was the mechanism that kicked that process and guided that process so we could grow teeth, have a digestive system, develop something called peristalsis, which is what moves the food down to your gut, the acid to deteriorate it, the ability to pull out the vitamins that you need, plus process it through a plumbing system? When did all of those things take place? And who decided that's the way we should be?
We didn't decide anything, nor did anyone else. No one decided it. This is how natural selection works. None of it was a guided process. It naturally works out that traits that are useful tend to make an organism more successful in life, and also more successful in breeding, allowing them to pass on their genes that include those useful traits to more offspring, who are then in turn more successful themselves than others who don't have those traits, allowing them to pass on more genes as well. Eventually, these traits become widespread throughout a species population to the point of becoming the dominant trait. This is the epitome of a natural series of cause and effect. And I mean, we didn't develop teeth or stomach acid or digestive muscles that push food into our stomachs. All of those things developed in our evolutionary ancestors a long, long time before we were anything even close to Homo sapiens. That stuff goes way, way back to when our evolutionary ancestors were still aquatic life. And no one decided for those aquatic creatures to grow teeth. Like most evolved traits, they would have first appeared from the result of a gene mutation. The first occurrence of tooth-like structures is believed to be in the posterior pharynx of jawless fish more than 500 million years ago. With the evolution of jawed vertebrates, teeth developed on oral jaws and helped to establish the dominance of gnathostomes on land and in water. Now, these early teeth would have been nothing close to the kinds of teeth that we have today, but they would have been useful for a variety of reasons. To be more successful as predators, as it would have allowed for better holding or killing of prey, also as defensive tools to fight off other predators, plus, of course, mastication.
Well, my understanding is that it's purely for mastication.
Oh, no, I don't do that.
Well,
Chewing of food would make it easier to digest and therefore lead to fewer digestion-related health problems. So a creature with some early, rudimentary version of teeth would have been better equipped to fight, to hunt, to stay healthy, and have more opportunities to procreate. And its offspring would have then shared the gene that allowed for tooth development. Those offspring would have also been more successful and had more offspring themselves, passing the same tooth-developing genes. Yada yada yada, millions of years and tons of creatures have evolved from these common ancestors and kept the teeth, along with further development of them into the kinds of teeth we see now. This is evolution. This is natural selection. This is how it works. And for the life of me, I can't understand how you can't understand this. It makes so much ridiculously good sense. But, of course, it goes against the biblical narrative that you're so desperate to believe in. So, of course, you reject this evolutionary explanation out of hand and try to make it sound silly and like it doesn't make sense, because you've got to aim for what it says in the Bible. Well, when it comes to that,
Well, somewhere along the line, the coding in our DNA changed.
The code in our DNA changed. All right. Codes in DNA can be manipulated these days and changed. And different people have DNA, but no new information gets added to DNA.
that is such a shitty way of putting it. Adding information? That's terrible. Genetic mutations are changes to your DNA sequence that happen during cell division. These don't necessarily add anything that wasn't already there, but it recombines the genetic code in a way that allows it to do things that it couldn't do before. We see this in simple chemistry all the time. If sodium metal and chlorine gas mix under the right conditions, they will form salt. Well, don't eat metal. It's bad for you. Don't breathe chlorine gas. You'll die. But put them together, and it's Margaritaville, baby. We see all the time in chemistry that different elements coming together in specific ways creates compounds that have properties that are different from the original elements. This doesn't mean that something new was added, just that they form into something different with different properties. And DNA, genetic code, is significantly more complex than simple compounds like table salt. So mutations that prove beneficial are not adding new information to the genetic code. just recombining it in different ways that allow for different effects.
See, what I'm trying to get at is it's a little suspicious that all of these things happened all by themselves without anything to guide them or to think them through. Okay, so for instance, let's say you had your teeth, you had your throat, you've evolved all of that, you've got peristalsis working its way down, but you haven't evolved your stomach yet.
What the fuck are you bitches babbling about?
Why the hell would an organism have evolved teeth, a throat, esophagus, peristalsis, virtually the entire digestive tract, but never have developed a stomach in order to actually digest food? How would such an organism have ever come to exist? Its parents wouldn't have had a stomach either, thus could not have survived to have offspring of their own, nor their parents, and so on and so forth, going all the way back to the first creatures to develop the earliest precursors to the modern digestive system. It would certainly require a god to have that stomachless creature, because nothing like that could have survived without the aid of some kind of divine intervention. But luckily, no such creature with 90% of a digestive system, but no stomach, actually exists. So again, what the hell are you talking about?
What would happen to your teeth and to your throat?
They would decay along with everything else in your body when you die from malnutrition because you don't have an effing stomach.
You had to happen all at the same time. It's called irreducible complexity. You're so complex that if we reduced a component of it, none of the other components would exist because they need each other to function.
Ugh, no, Todd. Irreducible complexity is the mother of all conclusions based on scientific illiteracy. No, modern animals didn't have to happen all at once. They happened very gradually over a long period of time. The key is that everything, all of their parts, were simultaneously developing and evolving at the same time. Sure, modern stomachs require modern intestines and modern colons and all the various parts of modern digestive tracts to function. But the stomachs of creatures a million years ago? They didn't. They worked with the rudimentary intestines and colons and digestive tracts of 1 million years ago. And the same was true of 1 million years before that, and 10 million years before that, and 100 million years before that, etc. All the individual parts and pieces that made up a creature's body 100 million years ago were significantly less advanced than our parts today. But they worked with the rest of the similarly less advanced parts of that creature. It's like if you tried to plug a modern transmission into the first Model T Ford. Guess what? It wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have fit. It wouldn't have matched. The Model T wouldn't have been able to accept it. But the transmission that it had, much less advanced than the transmissions of today, worked just fine for it. Frankly, automotive advancements is a good analogy here. Saying a human had to happen all at once, spontaneously created as is, with no precursors whatsoever, is like saying that self-driving electric cars had to be completely new concepts, created totally as is, with no simpler vehicles that came before them. No technological progress that led up to it gradually over time, because it's so complex that it just had to be a spontaneously generated, totally new creation. No. Cars develop in complexity over time, building on small changes and small improvements over a long period, with each successive generation getting more complex and developing new traits from earlier models. Now, where the analogy breaks down is that cars are intelligently designed, which is why we could greatly accelerate their advancements and go from covered wagons to self-driving cars in a couple hundred years. Whereas the unguided natural process of evolution and natural selection takes millions of years to see significant changes. But in short, evolution is a long, complex process that is tough for some people to wrap their noggins around. So it's much easier to insist that it's impossible for it to happen, and that instead, everything was just magicked into being through godly superpowers.
To present the Church's alternative to the theory of evolution.
All right, I want to ask you a question about DNA. Okay. How many cells do you have in your body?
Too many to count.
About 50 million,
Yeah.
give or take.
Yes.
50 million cells. How many strands of DNA do you have?
That I do not know.
Let me put it to you this way. If we took out your DNA, first of all, we could fit it into a tablespoon, but if we typed out the code, we wrote it down, you could fill the Grand Canyon with your DNA information 40 times.
Once again, what the hell are you babbling about? If we looked at a drop of water, you could fit it in a teaspoon, but if we typed out all the information we know about water, all of its traits and properties, literally everything we've come to know about H2O, how it acts and interacts with other compounds, its necessity as a basic building block of life, literally all the information about water, it would do much the same. That means nothing. You're just using big numbers to dazzle your audience into compliance with your ideology. Information is what you know about something. It's what you can derive from something. Here, this is information about an atom. Now, this picture takes up way more space than an atom itself. Hell, there are billions of atoms in the breath I'm expelling just to say the word atom. Isn't that amazing? What does it mean? It means nothing more than that you are easily impressed by big numbers. It certainly doesn't mean any of it was created by supernatural powers.
Put it another way. We typed out your DNA, and we took that and we tried to get it to the moon. Would it reach the moon?
Yes, and that is equally meaningless.
I would say yes.
5 million times it would. That is a lot of organized information. It's too complex to have happened all by itself.
Ahem.
Just like the sunglasses you're wearing, you don't believe that those just happen. They evolved kind of a nose thing, and then they got darker, and then there's a sun. You go, that's not really logical.
Ahem.
I think somebody made you. That's what I think. I think you're designed by your maker, a very intelligent, powerful being who's very moral, because we see another set of constants in this universe, morality.
Not this again. Not the moral argument. There is no morality constant. There's not a single issue, a single moral standpoint, not even one shred of a moral thought that has been universally agreed upon by every society, culture, or school of thought. Not one. Not ever. Morality is 100% subjective. Fluid based on the time period, the culture, the pressures put upon the people who develop them, etc. All morals are created by people and entirely dependent upon the place and time they took root in. The very idea of a moral constant displays utter historical ignorance.
I asked a young man earlier, would you be willing to tell me it's always wrong to beat up a small child?
No, absolutely not. I would be willing to say that I personally would think it's wrong to beat up a small child, but I would never say it as an absolute. Wrong is a value judgment, and as such is a meaningless notion outside the confines of a mind to assess such a value judgment. So again, we're running into a wording problem, where Todd is using manipulative language. Do I think it's wrong? Yes. Is it wrong? Full stop? No. Nothing is objectively right or wrong because right and wrong, value judgments, are necessarily subjective measures.
But what if I said, I don't think they are. I like beating up small children. I think it's good to beat up small children. How can you tell me I'm wrong?
I can tell you that, in my estimation, I think you are subjectively wrong. I think you are wrong by my personal conception of morality. You would obviously disagree, and based on your personal conception of morality, it wouldn't be wrong to beat up a child. Now, then we could bring in ethical systems, such as it being illegal to assault anyone, let alone children, and you would be punished by the rules and standards of the society that we live in, which were created to establish a functional society that protects the rights of its inhabitants against such assaults. But laws are not specifically reflective of common moral conceptions, lest things like lying or adultery would be illegal, and they generally aren't. We have a variety of rule systems that are based on ethics, and ethics are standards of behavior that are generally agreed upon or adhered to by those within the system. As standards for groups, ethics are generalizable to multitudes of people. But morals, on the other hand, are individualistic. They're unique to each person. So while I could tell you that you are ethically wrong to beat up a child, I couldn't tell you that you are morally wrong beyond what my own moral conception and the moral conceptions of others who would agree with me are. But if your morality allowed for such violence, then you would not be morally wrong according to your morals. I mean, this is not complicated. Morals are unique to the individual.
That religion has kind of written some of those things down, but if there is not a moral constant behind them, then it's just one set of people telling another people what to think.
Now you're getting it.
That's exactly what it is. That is what all religion-based morality systems are. That is what all morality systems are. That is what every system of rules, laws, and standards of behavior are. They're one group imposing their thoughts about behavior and right and wrong onto others. You haven't even offered any kind of refutation of that. You haven't even attempted to argue for any kind of externally existent morality. You've just asserted that such a thing must exist. You're just presupposing it. I would normally say you have to prove a claim like that, but I'll be even easier on you. Don't bother proving it. Just make an actual argument for it. Just give a basic reason or explanation as to why you think there must be an objective moral framework. Don't just assert that there is, act like you've won the debate, and move on to, therefore God. And that was Todd's last point in this video. A video that was titled, Math Proves That God Exists, and there was very little of math actually discussed in it. I mean, we did start off with talking briefly about why math has consistent outcomes, but that very quickly shifted to universal constants and unsubstantiated assertions that universal constants insists on a God to decree them. Then it shifted into an attempt to debunk evolution, a tactic which I can't believe evangelicals are still trying to attempt and trotting out. I mean, you've lost this particular fight, guys. Even the majority of all religious people in the U.S. accept the reality of evolution. They just square it with their religion by thinking that God directs and controls that evolution. But even dedicated Christians usually believe that the Adam and Eve creation story was just a myth or a parable, and that humans arrived through millions of years of evolution. You're trying to ice skate uphill with this one. You've lost the evolution debate as certainly as you've lost the age of the earth debate. And after his attempt to debunk the undebunkable theory of evolution, he fell back on the old apologist tripe of irreducible complexity. Then he slipped into the morality argument. I mean, there wasn't much of math in this video at all. Well, there wasn't much of substance at all. It was mostly just example after example of Todd making bald theistic assertions and then moving on as if making the assertion itself was proof of the claim. But of course, argumentation doesn't work that way. If all you have is blind insistence that, "Nuh-uh, I'm right because I said so," then you well and truly have nothing. And so that is where we'll leave things for today. So thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like this video, comment, and subscribe so you'll always be notified when new content comes out. Till next time, I'm Professor Plink, reminding you to keep striving for greater understanding. It's the best way to get wherever you want to go.